But we wanted education that really supports the practical application of what our students are learning directly to the students' lives as well as for their professional work. And of high importance is to be able to offer affordable educational programs. So to support your health as well as your thirst for knowledge, Hawthorn offers 2 webinar presentations each month in holistic health and nutrition at no cost because we believe in your commitment to ongoing learning. Well, greetings, everyone. I'm Paula Bartholomew, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Hawthorn University's Holistic Health and Nutrition webinar series. I'm just delighted that you've joined me early for a few announcements, and as well, we have an interview with our presenter, Trudy Scott. We're going to discuss the wave of virtual summits that are having such an impact, perhaps changing the course of healthcare as we know it, and how this is such a trend that's offering so much hope for many people that are seeking nutritional solutions. And at the top of the hour, we'll begin Trudy's presentation, Nutritional Solutions from the Anxiety Summit, New Research, Trends, and Opinions. So let's get started here. I'll begin with a few logistics because there's a number of people that are here for the first time. I want to let you know that for best audio quality, everyone in the audience is muted, but we really encourage your participation, so please post your questions or comments by typing them in during the presentation using the webinar chat panel. And we'll also be posting information for you to that panel throughout the presentation, and we'll be saving time at the end of Trudy's presentation for the question and answer period. Also, so you know that we're recording this presentation and it'll be archived to our website in a few days. And Hawthorn's offering an admissions special right now. All you got to do is complete an application and enroll in any Hawthorn program by May 15th, and we'll waive the application fee. And speaking of learning opportunities, there's another one here. To be able to learn more, Hawthorn's going to be at the National Association of Nutrition Professionals annual conference. It's in April 30th to May 3rd. It's in St. Paul, Minnesota. We really hope that you'll be there, and if you are, stop by our booth number 404 for more details about the conference, presenters, holistic nutrition board exam that's being offered there, and all the great food. Go to namp.org, and Trudy Scott will be at the Hawthorn table with us as well, so get to meet her and Alex and the rest of us, so looking forward to that. And at Hawthorn's last webinar on April 7th, Rebecca Katz gave a beautiful presentation on the healthy mind of translating brain science into the kitchen for optimal young. And no worries if you missed it. We recorded it like we always do, and you can access it anytime from our website under archived webinars. And Rebecca offered a copy of her new Healthy Mind cookbook. And Donna Carson-Jelly, a student at Hawthorn's Nutrition Consultant Program, won the drawing. So congratulations and happy birthday, Donna. All right, I think that's it for our announcements, and we're ready for our interview with our food mood expert, Trudy Scott. Hi, Trudy. How are you?
Hi, Paula. I'm great, and I look forward to seeing you at the NANP conference. As you say, great learning opportunities, great connecting opportunities, and amazing food. Really great.
Yeah, all good. Terrific. And I'm looking forward to your presentation, but I want to take a moment to congratulate you. You've had tremendous success on both of your anxiety summits, season 1 and 2, and I can just imagine that producing a summit like yours has to entail a lot of work and a lot of time and effort before it's ready for the public to view it, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's a lot of work, but I love it. It's really fun and very rewarding. Firstly, finding amazing speakers that I can share and amazing content, and then doing all the interviews. I have an absolute blast. It is time consuming though, because then we've got to get everything transcribed, and then the actual summit during that period, getting the feedback from everyone who's listening. It's just so wonderful to get the response from people, the questions, and interacting with everyone who's on the summit. So entirely, a huge reward at the end, but a lot of work, yes.
So for people that are in the audience that have not experienced a summit, just briefly describe what somebody would experience.
So a summit is like going to an event, like a conference, but it's online, so you can sit and listen at home, and you get to listen to a set number of speakers each day, and it will last maybe from a week to maybe 2 weeks, and you sign in, and then you get daily email reminders about who's coming up and what the topic is, and then depending on the summit, you get to either communicate with the summit host and the other speakers via Facebook, little areas on the summit page, or maybe, like in my case, I have a blog for each speaker, and you can interact with the summit host and with the other speakers via the blog. So it's just a great way to learn at home, to learn from all these great experts. And as you said earlier, I think we're changing healthcare because so many people are learning about information that they had no access to, and they're just feeling empowered. They're going back to their doctors. They're saying, wow, nutrition has an aspect, it has an impact on heart disease and thyroid and mood problems. So it is really, really great.
I agree. I'm blown away with the quality of information and presenters and how much there is. So talking about summits and how you first got started, I think would be interesting. Talk about that experience a little bit, would you please?
So I started out by going to business summits. When I first started looking into this, there weren't that many on the health front, and now there's so many. A lot of people say, oh, there's too many. I don't think there's too many. We can never learn enough. I attend and I learn all the time. But so I learned that whole aspect and the technical aspect in the business world, in the marketing world. And then I discovered, oh, well, maybe I should do my own summits. I started watching and learning and just looking at things that I liked, things that really appealed to me, the way things were delivered, the way things were done. Then I was invited to speak on a summit, which was very exciting, the first summit that I spoke on. And then I was invited to speak on more and more summits. And every time I just watched and I learned, putting away these little notes on what I wanted for when I did my summit. And then I decided that I wanted to do my own summit. And it's just a great opportunity to bring together the things that I believe in, the things that I want to share, and just do it in a bigger way. You can reach so many more people. As of the last two summits, our reach is over 25,000 people. And what an amazing opportunity to be able to share this powerful food mood message with so many people. So, yeah, that's my experience.
Just fabulous. I mean, 25,000 people to have experienced your voice, your information, and the change and the hope that can bring to them, and the reason that they tuned in for it. So it's just fantastic. So you're getting ready to host your Anxiety Summit Season 3 now in May. Is that correct?
Yes, May the 6th to the 20th.
All right. So this is the third summit you've produced and hosted, and so talk a little bit about what summits can mean for the attendees of your conference, of your summits.
So you'd mentioned the hope aspect, and I think that's a big one. One feedback that I had from someone was, this is a bouquet of hope. We are giving people hope. We're also giving them practical solutions. I try to have a mix of practical solutions, and this one coming up in May, we're talking about making sauerkraut. We're talking about making bone broths, practical solutions that you can actually impact and see results. I also am very passionate about sharing the research, because I think if we want food and nutrients to become mainstream, we need to show that there is research behind this. So I interview researchers, and then we make sure to include research in all the interviews. So there's information for consumers who are anxious, there's information for practitioners who want to help their patients or clients, nutritionists who may want to work with their clients, and then also for mental health professionals, and then other people in the research field. The other area that I think is really fabulous is bridging gaps between researchers and practitioners, and I'm really hoping to try and connect all the speakers with each other so we can learn and do even more good.
I'm always impressed with that with you, how good you are about your referencing and citing and bringing forth new research and assuring us that the people that you have presenting with you are doing the same thing. So thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I always call myself a bit of a research geek, and I love it, and I like to be able to share it, and I think a lot of people really value that.
We do. And I can imagine that you would recommend that Hawthorn's students and graduates would attend your summit and the other summits. Is that correct?
Yes, I think it's great. I listen to as many as I can. I've set aside a budget to purchase most of the summits that would fit and serve my clients for a number of reasons. Firstly, I get to learn from speakers that I may not have the opportunity to learn from, and I'm saving on traveling to an event possibly. The other aspect is that I have a lot of clients who say, oh, I heard so-and-so say on the thyroid summit that we should do so-and-so and so. And if I haven't attended the summit, I don't know what the latest information is that's being shared. So I'll usually buy them and I get the transcripts because I can read quicker than I can listen. So I'll skim through transcripts and then I may go and back and listen to some of the others when I'm traveling or when I'm at the gym or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just a great learning opportunity for the consumer and for practitioners.
Yeah, and I really like your suggestion of how you've experienced the summits and different conferences and paying attention to the way people present, what their style is, what you like, what doesn't work for you, and then adapting and honing your style and your way to present has really been fantastic. And I think it's really good recommendation for somebody that's building their business and doesn't have as much experience as you do with public speaking, but you didn't have that experience before and now you do, so
yeah, we grow. As we can't expect it to all happen overnight. We can just say, well, this is a goal that I've got and I'd like to do this, and it's a way that we can share in a bigger way. I mentioned, reaching more people. It's positioning yourself as an expert in your area, and the important thing is to make it very niche, because then you're going to draw the people who really are looking for this information. So right. I think that's really important, and usually we have a passion about something. I'm really passionate about anxiety because of my own issues, and it just makes total sense to be sharing something that I'm passionate about.
It sure does, and you're good at it, and you help a lot of people because of it, so we appreciate that too. And I'll encourage this, and I'm sure you will too, for Hawthorn students and graduates and our faculty as well, to pay attention to these summits and the information that's out there and learn from them and consider offering one yourself. Absolutely.
Excellent. And I appreciate the opportunity to share this today and then to share some highlights from season 1 and 2. I really appreciate this forum. Thank you, Paula, and thanks to Hawthorn.
Absolutely. And I just say everybody that studies at Hawthorn can consider this to become a regular speaker on summits, produce your own, and become inspired and be part of the change for others. And I don't want to forget before we go to your presentation, Trudy, but you have a very generous offer here for a digital copy of your audio transcripts from your anxiety summit. You talk about that just for a minute?
Yes, we're going to do a drawing, and someone will win a copy of either season 1 or season 2. And if they've got season 1 or 2, then we'll offer them the season 3 audios and transcripts when they're ready.
That's fantastic. Great offer. Thank you so much.
Well,
and good luck, everybody. All you need to do, there's going to be to have an opportunity to get this prize. There's a post-webinar survey with a few questions, and we value your feedback. It helps us, but it'll help you by being entered in the drawing for Trudy's gift of the anxiety sessions. So pay attention for that. All right, Trudy, I know you've got some great information to share, and this does conclude our announcement and interview segment. So I'm going to move to formally introducing Trudy here and get you ready to start your presentation.
Sounds great.
All right, so if you've just tuned in, let me welcome you to Hawthorn University's Holistic Health and Webinar Nutrition Series. Thanks a lot for joining us. I'm Paula Bartholomew. I'm going to be the moderator for this webinar. I'm here with Trudy Scott. She's going to be presenting nutritional solutions from the Anxiety Summit, the new research, trends, and opinions. And together we'll learn about diet, nutrition, and how they can be central determinants of mental health, as Trudy provides evidence presented from both her anxiety summits that have showcased a lot of important research, both for integrative practitioners and for people who are struggling with mental health issues. Trudy Scott is a certified nutritionist. She's on a mission to educate and empower people worldwide about the healing powers of food. Trudy works with clients, serving as a catalyst to bring about life-enhancing mood transformations that start with eating real whole food and using some pretty amazing nutrients. She's the author of the book, The Anti-Anxiety Food Solution, How the Foods You Eat Can Calm Your Anxious Mind, Improve Your Mood, and End Cravings. And Trudy presents nationally to health practitioners, sharing all this research and how-to steps on food and mood. She also publishes a great electronic newsletter entitled Food, Mood, and Gal Stuff. And it's available in a couple places. You'll see that in our chat box for links that go directly to these sites for Trudy. And Trudy, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can get to all this amazing information that you have to share.
Okay, great. Thanks, Paula. So, Nutrition Solutions from the Anxiety Summit, and this is from season 1 and 2. And Paula and I talked, and we decided we'd talk about some new research. I wanted to share some trends and then some opinions, because we do have some differences of opinion, which is not a bad thing. We like differences of opinion. We like to challenge each other so we can learn more. And I certainly learn every time I do one of these summits, because I'm interviewing people who have slightly different perspectives. And it's wonderful, wonderful learning opportunity for me and then for people who are hearing the summits. So this is what we're going to talk about today. We'll talk about food to prevent and use the word treat, actually treat anxiety or depression. We're going to talk about psychoneuroimmunology, and this is one of my favorite words. Dr. Kelly Brogan talked about this topic in season 2. We're going to talk about the gut-brain connection and the microbiome. We're seeing so much research in this area, and it's just really, really exciting to see the research and to have interviewed one of the most prolific researchers on the gut-brain connection, Dr. Ted Dinan. Then we're going to talk about fermentation, methylation, both MTHFR defects, COMT, GAD, and even MAOE genes, the effects of benzodiazapines and how dangerous they are. I interviewed a wonderful psychologist, Dr. Catherine Pittman, and she has some wonderful insights to share. We're going to talk about forests and flowers, some positive things that we can use instead of benzodiazepines. Pyroluria, social anxiety, and introversion. Obviously, this is a topic near and dear to my heart as a pyroluric. And then tryptophan and GABA. There's some myths out there that I feel need to be dispelled. There's also some differences of opinion, but there's a lot of hope. And I'm a big proponent of using targeted individual amino acids, and I'll share some other practitioners who also find them to be very, very, very useful. I'll talk about urinary neurotransmitter testing, which is problematic in my eyes, and then, of course, something wonderful, which is rooibos tea, a South African herbal tea. So this is my mission, is to get this message out in a big way, and my big mission that I always share is I want people to feel on top of the world. So this is me on top of the world, actually at Tahoe at Heavenly Ski Resort. What an amazing name for a resort, Heavenly. And you really do feel, you know, like the views are just absolutely heavenly. And I want everyone to feel on top of the world. You know, you deserve to feel your absolute best. And so many people just tolerate it. So many people don't know what it feels like to feel really great all the time. And writing my book, The Anti-Anxiety Food Solution, was a great opportunity to reach more people that I can work with one-on-one. But doing the Anxiety Summit has just taken it to the next level. I can just reach so many more people. I can actually connect with people. If someone's reading my book, I only know that they've read it and implemented it and found results if they do a review or if they email me. But with the Anxiety Summit, I'm connecting with people real time, which is just so wonderful, getting feedback, getting questions, and then sharing great resources. So part of it is the serving people who need this help, but the other part is highlighting amazing practitioners, sharing great resources. And then, as I mentioned earlier, is this collaboration and the connection between all the speakers on the summit. So I just want to take this really, really big, and doing it as a summit is just a really, really wonderful way to do it. So let's talk about some of the people that I interviewed. This was Dr. Felice Jacker. She's a principal research fellow at Deakin University in Australia, and one of the most prolific food researchers when it comes to mental health. And the topic of our title was The Research, Food to Prevent and treat anxiety and depression. And it was a question mark because what she said is we've now seen data from around the world, right across every continent, across every age range, showing that diet really does matter to the prevalence and incidence of depression and anxiety. And she has done so much research in this area. I'm in contact with her on a regular basis. When I first wrote my book, I quoted one of her first studies in my book. She endorsed my book, and she's just an amazing, amazing researcher who really wants to change mental health and really is showing that diet does matter. When I see something like this, diet does matter for mental health, it just makes me so excited, and especially excited when we see the research supporting it. So let me share a little bit more about some of the stuff that we talked about, and this was on season 1 of the Anxiety Summit. So what she found in her initial study, which was her doctorate, was that traditional diets lower the risk of anxiety and depression in women. And if you've heard me talk before, this is a study that I quote often. And it was interesting because when I interviewed her, she said that when she did her doctorate, the hypothesis was that this increased intake of animal foods would be a problem. It would be toxic. But she was very surprised to find that the strongest correlate of mental health was eating grass-fed red meat. And she was really, really surprised, but open to it, and is now doing more research in this area. And she found that this biggest correlation with red meat intake and good mental health was with women. So the more women who ate, the more women who had mood problems, the more red meat they ate, the lower their risk of mental health disorders were. And this was anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. So very, very profound correlation that she found, especially in this day and age when a lot of people are saying red meat is not healthy. The big thing here is it does need to be quality red meat. So grass-fed red meat is really important. Of course, it's a good source of amino acids, zinc, which is a very important cofactor in making serotonin. It contains omega-3s and has similar impacts on the omega-3 levels in a person who's eating salmon. So very, very nutrient-dense food. Of course, it's got iron, and iron is a common cofactor as well for making the neurotransmitters. So very exciting to see the research supporting this. And this is just a beautiful picture that I like to share. It's a rather large piece of meat. That would probably serve 3 people, but all those beautiful vegetables, the olive oil, the garlic, and just real whole food, which is what we want to be focusing on. Traditional diets are so important. Then a little bit more about Dr. Jacker. So in January 2015, there was a paper published in the Lancet Journal, and this is a mainstream psychiatric journal. And the title was Nutritional Medicine as Mainstream in Psychiatry. Very, very powerful. Very exciting to see it published, and Dr. Jacker is one of the co-authors of this paper. And I've shared the blog post here. I've shared a number of blog posts throughout this PowerPoint, so you can go and actually read the blog post and read more about it. You can get a link to the actual study, and you can read some snippets from it. And the other big thing that I really like to do is blog. It's just a great way to reach people too, and to get people commenting and having this sort of discussion between everyone who's following the work that I'm sharing. I respond to every single blog comment. It's another time-consuming aspect of what I do, but I love to do it, and I learn and I get to share, which is really great. But going back to Dr. Jacker, so this was one of her papers. As I said, she's published a lot, and she is actually working on the first randomized controlled trial that is looking at diet as a therapeutic approach for depression. First one that's happening right now. It's happening in Melbourne, and she's hoping to have results at the end of this year. And then I'll have her back on the Anxiety Summit possibly next year to talk about the results. So it's really exciting to see that we are now getting randomized controlled trials to look at this. She's also the founder of this wonderful organization called the International Society for Nutritional Psychiatry Research. Just reading those words together just gets me excited. How amazing to have nutritional psychiatry research in the same sentence. So really great group of researchers who are getting as much research together as possible. And I just say hats off to all the researchers, because the research, as I said earlier, is really important, and we really appreciate the researchers who are doing all this research so we can share how powerful it is. And then Dr. Julia Ruckledge, she is another psychologist who's a member of the ISNPR, a colleague of Dr. Jacker's, and I'll be interviewing her on season 3. And the topic of our talk is, what if nutrition could treat anxiety and depression? So it's quite interesting. We've got the research saying, what if this could make a difference? What if this could help? As a nutritionist who works with anxious individuals all the time, I know it works. I see it works on a daily basis. All the nutritionists listening in on this will say, yes, it definitely works. All my clients who are listening in on this, or other individuals who have tried food and nutrients, will say, yes, it does work. Why do we need the research? But I think we need the research to convince, the mainstream that it does work, and then also so it becomes part of the standard of care, because right now it's not. And if this could be part of the standard treatment for someone who has anxiety and depression, it's just going to make, the results are just going to be so much better. And then wouldn't it be wonderful if it was covered by insurance? And that's what I'm hoping we'll get to eventually. So it's going to take a while, but we're heading in the right direction, which is very exciting. Now, this is a presentation by Dr. Kelly Brogan. She's a women's holistic health psychiatrist, and this was psychoneuroimmunology. And what she's saying is that we can't look at psychiatry as a heads-up only phenomenon. She says it's limited outcomes and it could be dangerous. So we've got this relationship between neurology and brain science and the immune system. It's also sometimes called psychoneuroendocrinology. And what she's saying is that we've got this connection between the gut and the endocrine system, and saying that you can't treat one without knowledge about the other. And this is what she says. I think it's very exciting and really is a term that embodies functional medicine or naturopathy at its best. So we do have mainstream medical doctors totally using these approaches, which is very exciting. We just need more people to be aware of it. And Dr. Kelly Brogan is an absolute wonderful doctor who is doing amazing things, getting out and speaking. And I'm going to share a little bit later on. We do have a slight difference of an opinion in one area, and I'm going to share that. And this is what I referred to at the beginning, how we'll have these differences of opinions, but it's okay because it helps make us both ask questions and learn more. Then this is the presentation that I did with Dr. Ted Dinan, Microbes in the Gut and Psychobiotics as a Potential Treatment for Anxiety and Depression. And basically what he said is that in the 20th century, we focused on killing the microbes with antibiotics. And this century, we are recognizing that the health benefits of bacteria are important not just for our immunity, but also for mental health. And I just love this term psychobiotic, a live organism that when ingested in adequate amounts produces health benefits in patients with psychiatric illnesses. And he is the researcher who coined the term psychobiotic together with one or two other researchers. And our interview was fabulous. Beautiful Irish accent and really, really great interview. And then he also shared this connection between IBS and anxiety. And we are now recognizing that IBS is a gut-brain disorder, and at least 50% of patients with IBS will also have anxiety and depression. And again, we've got these studies showing that psychobiotics can actually produce GABA, they can produce serotonin, and actually help with, creating this antidepressant or this anxiolytic or anti-anxiety activity. So having this good bacteria in the gut can have a huge impact. And what he said is that the effects could be via the vagus nerve, could be because of getting into the spinal cord, or maybe affecting the neuroendocrine system. And Dr. Alison Seebecker is the expert on SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and you may or may not know there's a very strong correlation between SIBO and IBS, and she's going to be part of season 3. I've actually interviewed her already, and it was a fabulous interview. And then, of course, wonderful Julie Matthews, certified nutrition consultant and author of Nourishing Hope for Autism. and she's founder of this amazing organization called the Bio-Individual Nutrition Institute, where she talks about food and special diets for autism and various other conditions. And I interviewed her on fermented foods and probiotics, and I just love this quote of hers: fermentation is one of my foundational principles that help to make foods more nutrient dense and more digestible, thereby making us healthier. So here we've got some beautiful pictures of cabbage, green cabbage and red cabbage, and making them into lovely sauerkraut is just a wonderful way to make our diets more nutrient dense and of course more digestible. And then the other aspect is that we're getting these good psychobiotics in the food that we're eating. Because one aspect can be taking a supplement, a probiotic, and there's certainly a place for that, and I am very much in favor of probiotics as supplements. But if we can be adding in nutrient-dense, nourishing foods like sauerkraut, maybe kefir, yogurt if dairy is not an issue, and getting the benefits from the food we eat, how beautiful is that? So she actually shared a lot of the research supporting the connection, supporting some of the work that Dr. Dinan has done, and then also some practical solutions on how to actually make your own ferments. And I think teaching people how to make sauerkraut and some of the other fermented foods is just a wonderful tool to have in your toolbox, so you can actually start to make local, homegrown, in-season food that you can harvest in your own kitchen. That's what I think is wonderful. And I actually learned how to make sauerkraut from Julie Matthews. She was holding a class in San Francisco, and I drove down from Sacramento and did a half-day program with her, and it was wonderful. Then we have this study that Julie actually mentioned, and this was an animal study, and they found that this particular strain, Bifidobacterium infantis, was shown to help with reversal of some behavioral issues. It restored the noradrenaline concentration, it normalized the immune system, it increased motivation, and it led to these mice being less stressed. So this was a specific probiotic, and a lot of the research is showing that specific strains have specific effects. Certain ones will make more GABA, for example. So it's really, really interesting to see that specific strains can actually affect what our mood is, what's happening with our mood. Really exciting to see all this research. And then, of course, another nutritionist, Colleen Walsh. She's known as the Methyl Queen, and she talked about are your genes depressing you, MTHFR, in your mood. And this is an important topic to talk about because I have so many people saying, I've had my genetic testing done, I've got the methylation defect, what do I need to do? And she just shared that you don't have to see your results and freak out, oh my gosh, I've got all these polymorphisms. She shared that our DNA is not set in stone. Diet and lifestyle can go a long way to change our health destiny. So there are things that we can do when it comes to diet and lifestyle, and we can change what our genes are saying. Our genes might say we've got this methylation defect and we're going to have issues with detoxification, maybe energy production, DNA protection, our immunity is not going to be so good. We may have problems metabolizing histamine, and they can also actually affect the BH4 cycle, which is making our neurotransmitters like serotonin and GABA. But that doesn't mean that we are stuck, that we are in trouble, that we need medication. If we support our detoxification systems with a healthy diet, if we avoid chemicals in the home, if we boost our serotonin by taking tryptophan, for example, if we know we have a problem with histamine and we reduce histamine-containing foods, there are so many ways that we can actually not have the fact that MTHFR is affecting our health. We've got control over it, and I think diet and lifestyle can just go such a long way. So I really appreciate that connection that she made, and to help people realize that we have control over our health. We really do, just by making some diet and lifestyle changes. And supplements as well go into it as well, but that's just a high level, hope. There is hope. There is hope for us. We don't have to feel, oh my gosh, my grandmother had depression. My great-grandmother had schizophrenia. I've got someone who committed suicide in the family. You don't have to think, well, I don't have any hope. There is definitely plenty of hope because we've got so much control over things. Then we have Dr. Benjamin Lynch, and he talked about biochemical and genetic predispositions, the COMT, the GAD, and the MAO genes. And he actually talked about how too much methylfolate can raise norepinephrine and actually cause anxiety. And this is something we need to be aware of. A lot of people with the MTHFR gene may think, oh, I need to take really high doses of methylfolate, and that may actually be problematic. And I'm actually have him back on season 3, and we're going to talk about this very topic because too much is not a good thing. We also talked about some of these other polymorphisms. The COMT, which he shared, was very common, and this one helps break down dopamine. If you've got high dopamine, you may feel more anxious. And then it also helps break down estrogen and xenoestrogens, which are found in the environment. So making sure that we don't have these toxins in the environment, which may be plastics, BPA, that's going to help if we have the COMT polymorphisms. The MAO-A polymorphism, this is where tyramines in foods and histamines in foods may need to be reduced or eliminated. And there's obviously many other aspects that go into it. I'm just giving you some high-level approaches here. And then the GAD gene, and this is the one that affects your GABA. And it gets rid of glutamate, and then it helps us make GABA from the glutamine. So if you've got this polymorphism, you may need some extra GABA support. Then I talked to Dr. Catherine Pittman, and she talked about the adverse effects of benzodiazapines, and some of the common ones are Xanax, Valium, Klonopin, Librium, Ativan, and Valium is another one. The US has got a really, really high rate of benzodiazepine prescription. She shared how physiological dependence can occur within 4 to 6 weeks. I've heard many people say it can even happen in a week. It's the most terrible drug in the world. I think it should be banned. I really, really feel strongly about this. What she actually shared is that one of the most confusing withdrawal effects is more severe anxiety symptoms, and I see it all the time. So someone's on it, they decide they don't want to be on it anymore. It may be making them more anxious. As they start to withdraw, they may have more anxiety symptoms. They may even have other problems. They may have sleep problems. They may have a racing heart or tachycardia. They may feel more agitated. There's this term called pseudo-dementia that a lot of people who are on benzodiazepines experience, tremors and brain zaps. So really, really nasty class of drugs. And through her and the work that she's doing, I've managed to reach a lot of people and share the importance of, firstly, if you are on benzos, what you could expect and what you may need to do. And secondly, if you're anxious and you're thinking about a prescription, think twice, because there are better ways, and the food and nutrients are certainly better ways to do it. And then we have Sayed G. He's a researcher and founder of Green Med Info, and he just talked about beautiful things like forest bathing. It just sounds so beautiful. And what it is that you're in these forests and these beautiful environments, and they just have a relaxing effect compared to being in a big city or this urban environment. And then one of the studies that he shared, which I absolutely loved, was a study from Rutgers University, and they found that when they gave subjects flowers, they had 100% positive results in the emotions. And I just think how I feel when I'm given flowers. I just feel beautiful. I just love it. It just makes me feel so great. So just something as simple as that can make a difference. And obviously for people with very severe anxiety, there's a lot more to it. But just adding some beauty, some nature into your life can make a very big difference. And then I talked about zinc, vitamin B6, and pyroluria and social anxiety. And this is an area that is an area of my expertise, and I'm very passionate about it because of my own anxiety and my own pyroluria. And for those of you that don't know, pyroluria is a condition, it's a genetic condition. There again, we have this genetic condition, but we can change it. But if you've got it, you'll have social anxiety, you'll have this inner tension that you sort of cover up and you hide and you push through, really not enjoying one-on-one interactions. They're very tough and challenging. One-on-one, you have an error here. Not one-on-one interactions. One-on-one interactions are easier than group interactions. So that's a mistake there, but I've corrected it, so we're good there. You may have the morning nausea. You may have look-alike sisters, miscarriages run in the family, and it's often the boys that are miscarried, joint pain, and there's a whole host of other symptoms. And it's interesting, most of the studies were done in the 1980s, and there's a few studies that were done more recently, but there's actually a paper in PubMed that says pyroluria is a pseudo disease. So we've got this controversy. Is it a real condition? Is it not? And those of you that experience it and see the results by adding in the nutrients, you will say it definitely is a real thing and it definitely can be affected. And then, of course, I found this very strong correlation between introversion and people who have pyroluria, and a lot of introverts who feel anxious get on the pyroluria protocol and they feel a lot better. So my big message is introversion and nutrient deficiency rather than a personality trait. And I truly believe, and I'm finding that a lot of people who say, yes, I used to be an introvert, but I'm no longer an introvert because of being on the pyroluria protocol. So really interesting and challenging, a little bit of the status quo here, but that's what we're all about, learning and changing and moving forward. And then I'm seeing links to dystonia, which is a muscle contraction disorder, ADHD, chronic fatigue syndrome. A lot of people with pyroluria have leaky gut, which is a stress on the system. There's now I'm doing a lot of blogging on oxytocin and pyroluria. Oxytocin is the love hormone, and there's a lot of studies now showing a connection between social anxiety and low oxytocin levels. So doing the blog and getting interaction from people, I'm just seeing a lot of people are relating to a lot of these conditions who may also have pyroluria. And then, of course, the other area is fear of public speaking. And this is me speaking on stage and feeling very comfortable, actually feeling very comfortable speaking on a summit to 25,000 people as well. And if I wasn't on the pyroluria protocol, I think it would be a different story. So it definitely makes you feel more confident and more able to get out and speak. And then this is a psychiatrist psychotherapist that I interviewed, Dr. Josh Friedman. He's an integrative psychotherapist who has trained with Julia Ross, the author of The Mood Cure, and uses the aminos in his practice. And when I interviewed him, we talked about this fact that a lot of people say that oral GABA doesn't work, doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier, don't even bother to take it, it's just a waste of time. And I wanted to get his opinion of it. And his answer was so great, I quote it all the time. So he said, it's definitely something I use. I'm not a biochemist, so I don't actually know whether it crosses the blood-brain barrier, and nor do I care. The first question should be, is it harmful? And the answer with all the amino acids are no. They're not going to cause harm, especially when compared to psychiatric medications. The second question is, does it work? So it doesn't cause harm, it does work, so what's the big deal? So that was the first piece about GABA that I wanted to share, but I've got something else to share. And that is, you'll hear some people say that it's only going to work if you've got this leaky blood-brain barrier. And I really don't agree with this. When I started to hear that, I had a lot of clients say, oh my gosh, I'm so scared. The GABA works beautifully for me. Does that mean I've got a leaky blood-brain barrier? And I don't know. There's no way that we can measure this at the moment. And what I started to do was just dig around and look at some of the research. And I found that there's some research that indicates that the relaxing effects of GABA may be due to peripheral effects rather than getting into the brain. And I'm going to share with you where we found some of these GABA receptors. So this was in the talk that I did. I was actually interviewed, and I talked about targeted individual amino acids. So I talked about GABA, and I talked about tryptophan. So this was in that section on GABA. So let me just share some of the places where we might find some GABA and their receptors. The endocrine system. non-neuronal tissues such as smooth muscle and the female reproductive system. So we know that GABA helps with this physical kind of anxiety where you've got the stiff and tense muscles. And the fact that we're seeing these GABA receptors in the muscles makes sense because if it relaxes the muscles, you feel less physically tense and thereby less tense overall. Now, I did interview Joe Tata in season 3. He's a physical therapist, and he shared something very interesting that I didn't know about, and that is that they are finding GABA receptors in the fascia. So there's another connection to this physical connection to GABA and how it can actually relax you physically. So I learn. Every time I do an interview, I learn something new, which I absolutely love, and I get to share it with everyone, which is fantastic. So let's talk about amino acids because there are a lot of practitioners who use the amino acids. And of course, Julia Ross is known as a pioneer in the use of amino acids. I learned with her. I worked in a clinic for 2 years, and she's just an absolute hero of mine. And I interviewed her on season 1. It was an absolute honor to interview a mentor and hero of mine. And we had a really great interview. And I love that she shared that amino acids are really our only hope for quickly reversing the epidemics, not only of anxiety, but of depression, compulsive eating, and obesity. And they really are. They are our only hope, together with a lot of other approaches that we use. But they quickly reverse the effects of whatever the issues that's going on. We get results right away, which is what I really like about the amino acids. And then, of course, I interviewed Dr. Hyla Cass. She's a board-certified psychiatrist, and she's an integrative medicine practitioner. What a beautiful combination. And this is something that she shared on our interview. When someone has anxiety, it's not a Valium or Xanax deficiency, but it could be a GABA deficiency. And of course, GABA is one deficiency that you could have. It may be some kind of other deficiency. But it's so true. We need to get to the root cause of the problem and then give someone that nutrient that's going to address that root cause. And it could be GABA, it could be low serotonin, it could be low zinc, whatever the deficiency is that that person has. Keeping in mind that we're all unique, we all have our unique biochemistry. Someone may have a GABA deficiency, a serotonin deficiency, zinc, maybe a gluten issue or whatever it is, but figuring out what the issue is with that person and then addressing it. And then I wanted to share what Dr. Kelly Brogan's approach to this is. So she has a difference of opinion here. And this is one of the differences of opinion that I wanted to highlight because she's an integrative psychiatrist, as I mentioned earlier. And in one of our interviews, she said, there is never a realm in health where you have more opportunity to turn things around through these lifestyle changes than in mental health. Very, very profound statement. So lifestyle changes can impact mental health. And she's a very big proponent of a traditional diet, fermented foods, red meats, liver, adding in these nutrient-dense traditional foods. A very big proponent of addressing inflammation, and we're now seeing so much research on how inflammation can actually make anxiety and depression worse. Balancing the gut, so looking at the microbiome, looking at things like low vitamin B12, low cholesterol. We often think about high cholesterol as being problematic, but when it comes to mood, low cholesterol is very, very problematic. Low zinc, the effects of the birth control pill, and then adding in something like meditation. And I've interviewed her twice on the Anxiety Summit, and I love the work she does. But we've got these differences of opinion. And she says that depression, it's not your serotonin. And she's actually blogged about it a lot. She speaks a lot on summits, and she speaks at a lot of conferences. So this is why I want to share this, just because I want you to know that you're going to hear her say this, and I just want you to know my point of view. And she really doesn't believe that amino acids have a use. And I just say that low serotonin may be one of many contributing factors when you've got anxiety and depression. And please try the amino acids with your patients. And that first interview that I had with her, I actually said at the end of the interview, I'm hoping one day to change your mind. So she knows my opinions, and the fact that she said this has got me looking at the research more. So I can come up with, some good reasons on why we may want to incorporate the amino acids, because you get results so quickly and you get such effective results. So the reason I like the amino acids is you get results quicker. With her work that she does with her patients, she has amazing results and she does get results. But I want to give my clients hope right away. I want to get them feeling calm, get them feeling happier on day one. And that's what the amino acids do. So I just say using GABA and tryptophan can give you immediate relief for all this anxiety, the worry, the panic attacks, while you're looking at all these other factors. Why, looking at, is the gluten causing you to be low in GABA or serotonin in the first place? Is it leaky gut that's causing you to be nutrient deficient? Is it the stressful lifestyle that you lead? Whatever it is, those things take longer to find answers for. And if I can give you hope on day one, in that first 5 minutes, and make you feel calmer right away with an amino acid like GABA or tryptophan, then I'm doing the right thing. And that's what I really want to do. And we're also addressing the underlying deficiency, which is the low serotonin. So that's my thoughts on the amino acids, and I just really appreciate the fact that we have so many other practitioners who are using them with such great effect, and then also getting all the amazing feedback from my clients, because I'm learning that there's no one size fits all. Some people need the starting dose of tryptophan, which is 500 milligrams. Some people just need a dab of tryptophan, literally a dab. Open up the capsule, wet your finger, put a dab on your tongue, and see the effects. And I actually interviewed Carla Marie in season 3, and she talks through 2 case studies and how they're both different in terms of how they use the amino acids. So everyone is very, very different. And then I wanted to touch on urinary neurotransmitter testing, and I really don't feel it's reflective of neurotransmitter levels. Julia Ross is very much against urinary neurotransmitter testing. She actually wrote a really good article in the Townsend letter, and you can read that article. I actually linked to it from this blog that you can see here at the bottom. I find many people want to do it. Obviously, we want to test and we want to see what's going on, and I value testing, but I don't value testing that doesn't work. And I've heard from practitioners who think, oh, this is a really good way to test it. They'll use it for a short time and then they won't use it. And from what I'm seeing, it doesn't correlate with symptoms all the time. And I just think people it's more worth spending money on other tests than urinary neurotransmitter testing. What is most effective is to have someone do the amino acid questionnaire. It's in my book. I've got a modified version of the one in Julia's book. You can get it from Julia's book as well. And then the response to amino acid trials. So someone shows that they're low serotonin. You get them doing a trial of tryptophan or 5-HTP. They respond well, you're onto something. If they score high on the low GABA section, you get them on GABA. They respond well, they need the GABA. And then you just tweak and you fine-tune until you get the right amount. And that is just such a simple way to do it. And then over the course of a week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks, you may go up and up and up, and then you may start to taper off once they're doing a lot better. So that's the urinary neurotransmitter testing that I wanted to share. And then I wanted to end on a high note. Rooibos, a functional food in the management of stress. And this one was particularly interesting for me to share because it's a research that's being done in South Africa, which is my home country where I grew up. And Amanda Swart is a professor at Stellenbosch University in South Africa. And I came across her study. I've listed the name of the study here at the bottom of the slide. But I came across her study, I read it, and I thought, I really want to interview her. So I found these studies, and then I contact the authors, and I say, I'd love to talk to you, I'd love to interview you, I'd love to blog about you and share this information. And what she shared in our interview is that participants, and these were humans, it was a human trial, they drank rooibos tea, also you might know it as red bush, and I'll pronounce the Afrikaans pronunciation for you. It's rooibos. So they drank this rooibos tea for 6 weeks, 6 cups a day, and they soaked the tea bag for 10 minutes. And what she said is they didn't see the cortisol levels significantly decrease, but the ratio of active to inactive cortisol was low. And what we know is that the ratio of the active to the inactive cortisol, when it's high, this is associated with metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and hypertension. So the fact that you can drink rooibos tea or have your clients or your patients drink rooibos tea can actually have an impact on their stress levels and metabolic syndrome. Very, very powerful. I think it's having rooibos tea black with a slice of lemon, no sugar, is just a lovely, lovely way to do it. You could add it to a smoothie. You could put it in a soup. You can do it any way you want. I just like to drink it, but you can get it any way you want, and it's going to be great for helping with stress levels and keeping those cortisol levels under control. And I wanted to share my beautiful song. It's called Top of the World. I worked with a wonderful friend called Amma Jo, and she created a theme song for the Anxiety Summit. And I'm just going to read a few lines here. My very best days are yet to come. All anxiety and fear are gone. A whole new life I've never lived before. Right now, I'm feeling on top of the world. And we shared that with participants on season 2, and we're going to share that with participants going forward for all the summits. And it just gives people hope. And just when I'm thinking about the words and the tune, I've got goosebumps. It was really, really beautiful. And I shared earlier about how someone had said this was a bouquet of hope. And that's what I want to give people, hope. Really give them hope, because so many people who are not getting quick answers have been hopeless for so long. And knowing that there is an answer out there and that it can actually turn their lives around is just such a beautiful thing. I've got the links here to all the speakers from season 1 and 2. We've just managed to touch on a few here. But if you go to these blogs, you'll see a link to each of the speakers, and each of those blogs has research. It has snippets from the interview. It has some videos and a whole bunch of other things. Really, really great information. And read all the comments. The comments from people have been amazing. The feedback and questions are just invaluable for anyone to learn more about, what area that they are looking at. And this last slide. We just keep growing. I'm doing season 3 next month. I've got most of my speakers for season 4, which is going to be in November. I'm booking speakers for season 5, which is this time next year. Every summit that I do, I learn, and I get to share and educate more and more people. It's just wonderful. So a few people from the next season, this one coming up in May, starting May the 6th. Dr. Daniel Amen was absolutely fabulous to interview. He just had me laughing out loud 5 or 6 times. And he talked about how men and women process anxiety differently. And he talked about how he's this brain doctor, and now he's going to have to become a poop doctor because of the impact of the microbiome. So he was just really, really great, and just a wealth of information. I was honored to have him on the summit. And then Anne-Louise Gittelman, another hero of mine. She talks about parasites, anxiety, and how parasites are more active in the full moon. Dr. Eva Selhub, she's the author of a book called Your Brain on Nature. And we had a wonderful discussion about greenery and nature and love and oxytocin. Rebecca Katz, who was a previous Hawthorn University presenter, talked about brain food and good mood sardines, one of my absolute favorite foods, and then having yummy foods. Dr. Peter Bongiorno, we had a wonderful discussion about serotonin and lithium and oxytocin. And then I mentioned Carla Marie, a nutritionist. We talked about some case studies looking at pyroluria, tryptophan, and GABA. Great discussion on high histamine foods, SIBO, eating for hormone balance, broths, the effects of mold, and just so much more. So I'm really excited about the next summit, and I'm really thrilled to have had this opportunity to share highlights and opinions and different thoughts from season 1 and season 2. Thanks very much for having me, Hawthorn University and Paula.
My pleasure, as always, Trudy. This was just a fabulous, well put together presentation. I really applaud you about it. Pulling in all of these fabulous resources and different presenters, and the key points that they were presenting is just fantastic. And I just think it's fabulous that you provide the link to the presenters' blog posts right here, so that people can go and look at this and find out more. Just great resources throughout. Thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you.
And I love it that you have a theme song. I appreciate it that you told us what some of the lines were, but I'd much prefer that you sang us your song.
No, you would not want to hear me sing. That's one area that I'm definitely challenged, is the area of music.
So I think we should all learn it, so that at your next webinar we can sing it together. Okay.
Yes.
So we have a number of questions, but some things in terms of the presentation that I wanted to point out first. Colleen Walsh, the methyl queen, as you referred to, has two presentations coming up for Hawthorn, August 18th and September 1st. On the 18th, she's going to cover MTHFR and methylation, the big picture. And on the 1st, she's covering Are Your Genes Depressing You, MTHR, and Your Mood. She's not talking about your blue jeans here. So a good one. And then we have Trudy Scott back, which follows on September 15th. And you had a lot to say about the class of drugs for benzodiazapines, and you're going to come back and really focus on that and the issues with this, and what people can do as an alternative.
Yes.
So,
and you're
really
going to love Colleen. She's great. She's just fabulous.
Yes. And for people, there were questions that came in about the pylorrhea, and I want to let people know that you did a webinar for us, and I haven't had time to look this up of what the actual date was for that, but you can look at Hawthorn's archived webinars from our website. Trudy, was that last June? You remember?
I would think it might have been, yes. And I actually was in YouTube the other day and saw that it's had over 4,000 views. So it's a popular one.
Yes.
I don't know where do you have a link on the Hawthorn site where you link to all of these?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'd like to share that with my community as well. That'll be great.
Yes, well, we'll get that to you, Trudy, and it's out for the entire audience right now. Alex just put it up in the chat box, so everybody has a direct link right now to the archive to your webinar. Okay, and let me see for questions. Oh, for the Rutgers study, I really appreciated the inclusion of the flowers. I think it was such a good point to include, and also appreciate what you said, not to downplay or discount, the issues with anxiety, depression, things like that, but to really point out that diet and lifestyle and these small things that we can do can actually have a significant impact, and keep paying attention to that. Okay, so for some questions, you ready?
I'm ready.
Wondering about if there's a few key foods that you have that you recommend for just general support of mental health.
Well, firstly, I would say real food, so not processed, not in a box. I'm a big fan of red meat because of all the reasons I mentioned. Of course, fish is wonderful, so I would go with salmon. I would go with sardines because they're low in toxins and they've got all the omega-3s and protein. And I would add beautiful leafy vegetables. I would add organic produce. There's a lot of research showing that non-organic produce can be problematic in terms of anxiety and depression, so that's a very important factor. And then, of course, healthy fats. Butter is good. Actually interview Kayla Daniel on this next summit, and we talk about butter, so butter's good. Olive oil is good. There's actually a number of studies that have shown that olive oil actually reduces anxiety. Who would have figured that? It's got so many other beautiful benefits. You don't think of it as having a mood benefit as well, but herbs and spices. So water, getting enough water is important. There's actually a direct correlation between water consumption and neurotransmitter production. So those are just a few things that I would think about. Then, of course, not just the foods, but definitely eating for blood sugar control. So eating breakfast is really important. That makes a big difference. And then the no-nos would be no to gluten, no to sugar, and no to caffeine. And those are easy things to give up, when you have the amino acids on board, because they break that addiction and they break that emotional component and that need to self-medicate, because a lot of people are self-medicating with these foods, and a lot of people don't want to hear that they need to give up things. They feel deprived. But when you're addressing the brain chemistry with the amino acids, then you don't feel deprived and you're not having to use willpower. So that's another reason why the amino acids like tryptophan and GABA are so powerful.
And does rooibos have caffeine in it?
No caffeine. No, it's naturally caffeine free.
So there's your alternative remedy.
Yeah, there you go. And I love carob. A lot of people who like that thick coffee kind of taste. Carob is a beautiful option. It's rich in magnesium, and a lovely beverage. A carob beverage is boiling water with some carob powder, some coconut milk, and some cinnamon. Beautiful, lovely, thick, yummy beverage. And then one of my favorite snacks are pumpkin seeds. Love the pumpkin seeds. High source of zinc, good for blood sugar control. And some research has actually shown that the tryptophan and the zinc in the pumpkin seeds helps with social anxiety and insomnia. So really nice, healthy snack.
Yeah, Rebecca was all about the pumpkin seeds too, having it in all of her pockets, in her husband's pocket, just in case she ran out.
Absolutely, I've always got them with me. And when I travel, I take grass-fed jerky with me, and I take pemmican with me when I travel and when I'm on the road and I need a snack. And I just love pemmican, Native American fat source. I call it the energy bar of the 21st century. It's just wonderful for sustaining you when you're on the road and on the run.
No, it was a good suggestion there. And you talked well about the grass-fed meat, and there was some confusion with somebody's audio, and so they missed it and thought you were not for the grass-fed meats.
But, definitely a big fan.
But there's a couple of questions that surrounded this that I'll follow with for her, and especially given the current paleo trend and the grain-brain hypothesis. Are there books that you would recommend for repairing the gut or for supporting this paleo trend, or the use of red meat?
I think all the paleo books are great. Any of them are great. There's really Sarah Ballantyne's written a really nice one that focuses on autoimmunity, and I've had a lot of people that get on that autoimmune protocol and they do pretty well. Terry Walls has a nice book talking about her MS and her recovery from MS, and it's a lot of the same principles. We talk about autoimmunity, we talk about MS, we talk about mood problems, and your disease may manifest differently depending on your genetic predisposition, and it could be the same underlying cause. So all of these diets are beneficial, and the wonderful thing is you get on a diet to improve your mood, and it's going to lower your risk of cancer and heart disease and Alzheimer's and all these other good things. So I think those all, just keeping up to date with what people are saying on summits, as we said, and then reading all the newest books, I just think are fabulous, because a lot of the new books are bringing in the new research, which is important, and especially with all the gut and the microbiome research we're seeing now, we need to keep up to date with what's going on.
So true. So question back to histamine. How do you know if they have a problem with it?
So with any issue, there's some testing that can be done. There's also the elimination diet. So you would, if you suspect it, you could have them remove high histamine foods. And some of the high histamine foods are the fermented foods, aged cheeses, aged meats are typical examples of histamine foods. And if someone says, well, whenever I eat, aged cheese and I don't feel good, that would be a first clue. The other aspect is if you've got the MAOA gene, that would be a clue that maybe you need to think about it. I'm recommending most of my clients, all of my clients now, I'm recommending that they get the gene testing done, the 23andMe, and it's other little clues that maybe something needs to be looked at. And I have to admit that the whole histamine, the low histamine diet approach is a new area for me, which is the reason why I interviewed Yasmina. She's the founder of a website called The Low Histamine Chef. Wealth of information, very big correlation to mental health, and she just shared a wealth of information that I can't possibly remember everything now, but there's a DAO enzyme, DAO or DOA, I can't even remember which one it was, but there's some enzyme that you can measure, and the testing is not 100% conclusive, and it's not recognized in the mental community, even in the mainstream medical community. So it's a tough one to figure out. I think the big clue would be, well, she actually has a list on her website of all the possible symptoms that someone with histamine intolerance could have. So it's very, very widespread. It's sort of a catch-all for a lot of conditions. So the easiest thing to start with would be to remove some of those foods and see if you notice anything.
Great. Great response.
That could be a whole hour, 2-hour, half-day presentation, actually. It's a very complex area. Yasmina actually had schizophrenic type symptoms. She had really bad anxiety and panic attacks, and when she removed those foods, she noticed a big improvement. The good thing is, she says you don't have to remove them forever. You remove them initially to heal, and then you can add certain foods back in, provided you're eating other anti-inflammatory foods. So really, really, really interesting, and I'm excited to learn more and connect her with some other practitioners in the mental health area. Dr. Carl Pfeiffer and Dr. Bill Walsh talk about these histamine imbalances, and she wasn't aware of the work that they're doing. So I'm going to be, connecting her with the work that they're doing, and then sharing her work with them. So again, this collaboration, so we can all learn more and improve how we help people and improve people's health.
Absolutely terrific. Excuse me. I wanted to just bring up a point about amino acids and using of amino acids, and Kelly Brogan's position of they don't work, and your position of using them for immediate relief, and any cautions around it. And the one that comes to mind most notably would be the caution around using tryptophan if they're taking antidepressants, particularly the MOA antidepressants. So do you have anything you want to speak to that, Trudy?
Yes, and that's a good point. There's a place for everything, and each person is different. So I mentioned earlier, some people may need small amounts versus big amounts. There's also the quality issue. Certainly, there's very big difference between different brands of tryptophan, so that could be an issue. Certainly, if someone is on an SSRI, they would need to be working with their doctor and a knowledgeable practitioner who can guide them. I will have people on an SSRI also use tryptophan, but I'll be working in conjunction with their doctor, so their doctor knows that they're doing it. And their guidelines are to take the tryptophan or the 5-HTP 6 hours away from the SSRI. So most of the time my clients will talk to their doctor about moving their SSRI to the morning, so we can have them do tryptophan or 5-HTP in the afternoon or evening. So those are things to think about. There are a few other things to think about. Some people are concerned about tryptophan because of the eosinophilic myalgia scare many years ago. I'm not concerned about that. There's enough research showing that it was a one-off thing. And then I've seen some recent concerns about tryptophan going down a different pathway and not making serotonin, but making quinolinic acid.
Yes.
And that I've spoken to a number of practitioners who haven't seen that in practice. It seems like it might be a theoretical concern. It is something that obviously we need to be aware of, and it's an area that I'm going to be taking a deeper dive into and learning more. Great Plains actually has an organic acid test where they actually measure kyanuric acid and quinolinic acid, and they say that if someone has it high, they need to stop the tryptophan. So I'm still on the fence about that, but of course when there's any time that there may be something that's going to cause someone harm, I want to obviously look into it a little bit more. And it may just be that some people are more prone to this issue than others. So a little bit of a longer answer, but it's important to be aware that there are some possible concerns.
Yeah. And for the biochemical pathway, I think we really need to look at methylation issues in that
Absolutely.
regard, and
Hmm.
that's where that falls in. But kind of a complication around the tryptophan, taking it 6 hours away from antidepressants, that's a good recommendation, but oftentimes people are taking these for sleep. And so you're taking the tryptophan for sleep and taking an antidepressant at bedtime to facilitate sleep as well. And that'd be difficult to take 6 hours
Yes,
apart. So.
well, it would be. And yes, a lot of people are on trazodone, for example, for sleep. And I would work on, look at other reasons on why they need that support. And it may be that it's not a serotonin issue that's causing the sleep. It may be high cortisol, or it may be parasites. Both of those could keep you awake at night. So maybe addressing that, and then having them not do the SSRI on a weekend when it doesn't matter if they don't sleep so well, and seeing if the tryptophan can make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So you do need to be aware of serotonin syndrome, and I have not ever had anyone do the SSRI and the tryptophan at the same time. So that would be a caution. But on the same level, I've only ever had one person in all my years of working where we suspected that they may be having some symptoms of too much serotonin, and they stopped the tryptophan immediately. So it's the caution about serotonin syndrome is there. It's a real condition, but I've also spoken to a number of practitioners, and it doesn't seem to be, they're not seeing it when someone is using tryptophan, but it's good to be aware of.
Yes, thank you. Um, in terms of amino acids, are there amino acids that are equivalent to free glutamates, which are excitotoxins?
Can you ask that again? Amino acids equivalent?
Are amino acids equivalent to free glutamates, which are excitotoxins?
My best answer for that is glutamine could convert to either glutamate or
Right.
glutamic acid or GABA. And there occasionally someone who takes glutamine, which I use. We didn't talk about this, but glutamine is amazing for healing the gut. It's amazing for blood sugar stability, and then it can be calming. So for most people, it's calming. It'll convert to GABA. For some, it can be a little bit stimulating. I'm hoping that's answering your question.
Okay, thank you. Just staying on tryptophan here for a minute. This person has a naturopath that's recommending 2 to 3 times a day of tryptophan, but they're still struggling. Also taking D3, fish oil, vitamin B complex, adaptogen, and a lot of the supplements are stressing her out and trying to keep track of it, and wanting a suggestion for quicker relief.
Did they say if it's for sleep or for mood? I'm guessing it's.
No, I don't know what the struggle
Okay,
is. Oh.
so I'll just be a generic one. So firstly, I'd look at the timing of the fish oil and the B complex. If it's later in the day, it could be affecting sleep. Secondly, as I mentioned earlier, if it's a sleep issue, the tryptophan may not be the issue. Low serotonin is one factor. If it's a physical tension at night, you may want to add in GABA. I find that GABA in higher doses, typically higher than I use in the day, like 500 milligrams, maybe 1,000 milligrams of GABA at night can be helpful if you have the low GABA symptoms, which is the stiff and tense muscles. And then look at other factors. If sleep's the issue, other factors that could be impacting sleep, and I mentioned cortisol, I mentioned parasites, and another factor could be food intolerances, gluten, SIBO, that can keep you awake at night. So just looking at the whole picture would be helpful. And then the other very big thing with sleep, of course, is blood sugar control. Right. So making sure your blood sugar, starts out well at the beginning of the day with a good protein breakfast. And then caffeine. I have so many people say, I just have 2 cups a day, but I can't sleep. Get off the caffeine, and they're able to sleep. So those would be some of my pointers.
Right, great. And on an amino acid for questionnaire, questionnaire in your book, do you have questionnaires on your website or specific ones that you would recommend?
Yes, I have a whole chapter in the book on the amino acids and questionnaires there for each 5 categories based on Julia Ross's questionnaire. I've modified it slightly. There is a one on my website. If you go to the website, everywomanover29.com, and you go to blog, and you just search for amino acid questionnaire, you'll find it. And if you go to that same blog and you search for pyroluria questionnaire, you'll find those online as well. And they are on some of the links from the presentation today. In the section on the amino acids and the pyroluria, on those blogs, you'll find links back to those questionnaires.
Great, thanks. And back to methylation for a minute. You find that magnesium drives the methylation cycle?
Magnesium is so important. Yes, it's important for the methylation cycle. It's important for making serotonin and GABA. It's calming in itself, a very common deficiency. So absolutely. I had Dr. Carolyn Dean on one of the prior summits, and of course she's written the book called The Magnesium Miracle, and it is just so important, depleted by so many nutrients, depleted by so many drugs. We talked about fluoride, drugs that have got this fluoride component attached to it, and how these drugs are depleting people of magnesium. So really important nutrient, a very big factor when it comes to mood and other issues. Of course, it's important for heart health as well, so a key nutrient.
Yes, I agree. And that's another, one we could just spend an hour on just talking about magnesium. Sure. And connection between hyperthyroid and anxiety.
Hyperthyroid?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Absolutely. Yep. We had Isabella Wentz. She's written the Hashimoto's Thyroiditis Guide, and she talked about hyperthyroid. So did Hyla Cass in the second summit. We talked about hyperthyroid. So this is when you've got an overactive thyroid. You're going to feel agitated, racing heart, which can feel like anxiety. And then, of course, if you've got Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is the autoimmune condition, you may have symptoms of hypo, the underactive, and symptoms of hyper, the overactive. So you may feel tired and sluggish and cold, and then other times you may feel agitated and anxious.
Good points. And questions again about pylorrhea, your protocol. You can find out more about your pylorrhea information from your website. I think that you have a protocol there, right?
I do, and then it's in the PowerPoint that you mentioned earlier. It's basically zinc, B6, and evening primrose oil, and a good multivitamin that doesn't contain copper. And if you go to that pyroluria questionnaire of mine, there's so much information on there. And then, just search on the blog for pyroluria, and you'll see the blogs related to introversion and chronic fatigue and ADHD and oxytocin. I blog about it a lot.
Yeah, it's good. And again, that's at everywomanover29.com.
Yeah, and that website's going to be changing actually, but all those will be redirected to the new website once we get it up.
Okay. And then for the protocol for dosages on B6 and zinc, etc., they could find that there, and it'll be, relevant to their biochemical individuality and other needs as well.
I can just share the starting dose. 30 milligrams is what I usually start with the zinc. No copper in it. OptiZinc is one that I like. B6, I start with 100 milligrams and go up to 500 milligrams, and then sometimes switch over to P5P, and then the evening primrose oil, 1300 milligrams. And then obviously fatty acid testing is helpful, monitoring dream recall for vitamin B6 status, and using the zinc tally for zinc status.
Great. And if a person's not deficient in an amino acid and they take a lot of one kind, is it dangerous? Can it create an imbalance? Will it trigger worse anxiety, depression?
Absolutely. I wouldn't say it's dangerous, but a reverse effect can definitely happen. So if you try tryptophan and you don't have low serotonin, you may start crying or you may feel unhappy. So it can definitely cause a reverse effect if you don't need it. And even if you do need it and you take too much, it can make you worse. I actually was speaking to someone today, and on her own, she tried 750 milligrams of GABA. She had flushing, and she felt terribly anxious. And I shared with her that that's a very high amount, and maybe 125 milligrams is going to do it for you, and 750 is going to make you more anxious. So there's definitely too much of a good thing.
Right. Okay, so let's go into perimenopause a little bit here, and with the anxiety and racing thoughts that have arrived with perimenopause, and high levels of copper and estrogen are dominant. Will these eventually subside with menopause, or will it be a lifelong thing in trying to detox the estrogen pathways?
No, definitely should be able to be addressed, and that's when my problems all started. And getting on the pyroluria protocol actually helps a lot with that because the zinc pushes out the copper. You may need additional GABA and tryptophan, serotonin support. Those help with the GABA. They help with balancing out the progesterone and estrogen. So the big thing is how stressed are you, and if you've got burned out adrenals, that's going to have an impact on how your perimenopause and how your menopause is. So stress reduction, we didn't even talk about that, is a huge, huge aspect. Stress just plays a role in so many conditions. So dealing with that and then looking at the underlying factors, getting those plastics out of your environment, out of your cosmetics. We didn't even talk about that. So there is definite answers, and there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel. And it's not an oncoming train. It's a beautiful sunshine.
It's a beautiful sunshine, and it's so important to keep pointing out the other contributing factors, and that this too shall pass.
Yes.
In situations like the peripause.
And the beautiful thing with when I've interviewed people on the summit is that so many of the experts have had their own journey, which is why they got into this. And they've come through the other end, and now they're helping people. This is what happened with me, And a lot of people feel hope when they hear that, because real people have real problems and they get solutions. And there's an answer for everyone. It's just a matter of sticking with it, looking for the answer, finding the right person to help you, finding the right cause, and you can feel on top of the world again. You really can.
Thank you. Just a few more questions, and then we'll go to some closing comments. But have you seen any medical or researched evidence of amino acids for treating autoimmune disease such as rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, and fibromyalgia?
Definitely for fibromyalgia, a strong correlation with fibromyalgia and low serotonin. I would suspect that GABA would help if GABA may be low with someone with it because of the physical pain. Not that I don't know that I've seen anything specifically for rheumatoid arthritis or lupus, but I would think of the amino acids for helping to get off some of the foods that may be a factor, like gluten or some of the grains. And some of the sugars, which would definitely have an impact. So there could be a correlation there.
Right. So there's a question about high sugar cravings and what could be causing that, and that's another whole hour. But, here's a situation where, with amino acids, just being, low blood sugar and anyway, I'll let you take the rest of that, Trudy.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it. Low blood sugar is the first thing I would look at. Looking at the neurotransmitter imbalances, and then if we're not getting results with those changes, then I would definitely look at dysbiosis, because if you've got candida, it's going to say feed me, feed me, feed me, and no amount of amino acid or blood sugar control is going to help. You need to get rid of the candida or the parasite or whatever is causing the gut imbalance. So those would be my first approach.
Thanks. And a broad
question.
One
other
here.
Thing about that that I've found to be that I actually heard from Dr. Alan Christensen. He was on season 2. He talked about having more protein in the morning. Very important to have a much higher protein in the morning and then have less protein in the evening. And that's in his new book, The Adrenal Reset Diet. A very interesting approach about adding in, having this more protein in the morning and having, and I can't think of the name of the carbs that he talks about. It's just gone out of my head. But anyway, it's very interesting, a new approach that he's finding to be very effective. His study that he had done in his clinic was looking at perimenopausal and menopausal women. So I don't know how effective it is for males or for other age groups, but he has had great results with that.
Yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting to follow. He's an interesting man, and I'm trying to coordinate getting him on the Hawthorn webinar for a presentation. So
great. I'd be happy to make an introduction. He's wonderful.
Right, thanks. So kind of overall here, the difference between MTHFR gene mutations and pyroluria, and would the symptoms be different, or dietary recommendations for these?
We are seeing a lot of correlations. When I first started working with pyroluria, there was another practitioner who said yes, she was seeing more and more people, and now I'm seeing it. I actually have the 1298C and have pyroluria, and I'm seeing it to be very common to see both. The approach for the methylation defect is stress is an important thing, getting toxins out of the environment, because toxins are stressed for people who have pyroluria. Obviously, with MTHFR, there's more sort of a detox aspect to it. And then there's the folates, the methylfolates that can make a very big difference. And there's no set protocol, there's no set dosage. It's very individualized. Some people need a small amount, some need a bigger amount. So I see them go hand in hand, and supporting both can make a very big difference.
I agree. And before we go into closing comments, I want to make sure that you let everybody know when Season 3 Anxiety Summit starts.
Okay, Season 3 starts May the 6th, and it goes to May the 20th. And I hope to see everyone there. It's going to be really, really great. Thank you, Paula.
Yeah, it should be fantastic. Some great presenters lined up for that, so I'm looking forward to it.
Good.
All right, I want to remind everybody that this webinar was recorded, and it'll be available on Hawthorn's website under archived webinars. It'll be there in just a few days. And so you'll be able to review this. There's a whole lot of topics, a number of them from Trudy Scott previously, so check it out. And there's a survey to fill out after the webinar ends. We look for your feedback and comments to guide us, and we consider that carefully. Always appreciate you taking the time, and remind you to complete it for a chance to win a copy of Trudy's and Anxiety Summit audio and transcripts. And just a reminder that Hawthorn's Health and Nutrition webinars are the first and third Tuesday of the month. Reserve your seat, join our mailing list, and we'll share with you about the upcoming presentations. And I want to invite you to join us for our next webinar. It's a two-part webinar on Tuesday, May 5th and the 19th, when we host Dr. Helene Waldman, who will be addressing the topic of minimizing risk factors for cancer, and on the 19th for cancer protective nutrients and foods to maximize nutrition that are post-treatment. And like we did today, we'll start at 3:50 Pacific time for our announcements and an interview with Helene, so I hope you'll join us for that segment too. And I think that brings us to a close for today. Really a lot of positive feedback for this presentation, Trudy, from me too. I thank you for everything that you're doing. What a difference you're making in the world. I can say world now. You're talking globally. The outreach that you have and the positive influence you're having for so many. So thank you for that. Keep up the good work and keep them coming back to Hawthorn.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot for having me. Thanks for giving me the opportunity, and doing these webinars just enable us to share it even further. So it's wonderful.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take good care of yourselves. See you next time.